So for the first time in 10 movies, no R2-D2 or C-3PO?
I know. I want my money back.
I didn't even notice they weren't in it.
It's sad. Like, they were the show holders. Like, they had that record of being in every movie. So
I didn't even notice their absence. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is Wyatt.
Yeah.
Not only is this his first time ever on Durbania, but as he tells me, this is his debut on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, welcome,
Wyatt,
to Durbania and YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we just got into a really good conversation outside of the movie the other night when we went and saw this movie, and I was like, man, we gotta do that in front of a camera.
Yeah,
so
I agree. No, I'm so glad you invited me.
Thanks. Yeah. So overall, I thought it was a pretty decent movie. Yeah. Well, let's kick it off to you first. What are some of your general thoughts?
You want me to go first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You're the guest. Guests always go first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I really liked it. I was really nervous going into this. Just the promotional material, the sloppiness of just the pre-production and everything. And then the first trailer, I was like, oh, that doesn't look great. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I think it holds on its own. I think it added to Star Wars as a whole. I had a good time. I'm always hesitant to finalize thoughts.
Yes.
Until a second viewing. I really got accustomed to cementing my thoughts on a second viewing when I get all of my anticipation and I just think of it a little more objectively. But from my first impression, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I have to let things settle and sit for a little bit than having this camera here. I can't always do that. Got to sit down and start talking. But, having a day, though, to think about this movie and let it settle, I think the more I've thought about it, the more I've liked it. I guess I didn't know what to expect as far as the tone of the movie, but it felt like Ron Howard knew what this movie had to feel like and what it had to be. And so I didn't feel any of the mess, and I didn't feel like it was disorganized. It felt like the movie knew its tone. It knew what it was supposed to be, and it just did that. And it wasn't epic, but it wasn't supposed to be epic. It's not an epic Star Wars saga film. It's just a fun Star Wars crime movie.
I agree. Actually, on the way over here, I realized that the movie I would compare it to the most would be Rogue One. Mm-hmm. Just because they found kind of something that works as a great side story from Star Wars. They found a way to build that universe without it really interfering with their main storyline, and I was starting to draw a few connections with Rogue One. It had similar grittiness at times. They weren't afraid to just remove characters, kill them.
Yep.
But it also had really good moments of humor, genuine humor. It had amazing production quality, obviously. And it just built the universe in a really believable way to me. It felt through and through like a Star Wars movie, which is always a great thing.
No, I agreed with that. It really felt like a Star Wars film. But what did you think of the actor whose name I can never pronounce, so I just don't even try, who played Han Solo?
Alden Ehrenreich, I'm going to guess?
I don't know. Go with it.
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
I actually really enjoyed him. So I was a little bit disheartened because part of when I watch a movie I really am excited about, I go into it blind. I don't read any pre-review. I don't like to be spoiled. I don't want to be swayed.
I try to do the same. I don't like that either.
I go in blind. And so my ritual after a movie that I was really into is then I just digest everything afterwards. And I was disheartened because I read and watched 6 different reviews, and they're all so negative. So I'm probably the only person that has this really positive review. But in regards to Han Solo, I really enjoyed it. I was a bit trepidatious. A bit cautious.
Yeah. I
was hopeful, but as soon as they announced who was going to play Han Solo, my first reaction was, that doesn't look like Han Solo. I don't know. And I was worried, and so I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then when I was watching, I shared this with you last night, but when I was watching, there was enough lines and just cute face, just the line deliveries, and just that in that moment I was like, okay, that was Han Solo to me. I bought it, and I had enough of those moments. There's probably I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 moments where I was like, oh, that was Han Solo.
Nice.
100%. And because they had enough of those moments for me, there was a buy-in. I was able to believe it. I think he did way better than I expected. And to be honest, okay, this is gonna sound weird, but to be honest, after first viewing, I thought this was a more Han Solo than Harrison's Ford.
Whoa!
In The Force Awakens.
Oh, okay, that's different. Okay, so yeah, if you went to the original trilogy, I would have cried just a little bit.
Not.
Okay,
no.
Force Awakens.
So the first time I watched Force Awakens, I was looking at Harrison Ford and I was like, this doesn't really feel like Harrison.
Well, he was old and he broke his leg, so he was limping. Yeah.
But even his acting at first, at the later viewings, I was like, okay, that is Han Solo. But Harrison Ford, even in Force Awakens, the first few viewings, I was like, is that really Han Solo? Like I don't know. In this, I had no doubt that I was seeing a Han Solo film.
Awesome.
Not an impersonator, which is great. That really would have taken me out of the movie.
See, I had a buy-in for his character for a different reason.
Okay. Huh.
And that was because I chose to forgive him before I walked in.
Okay.
I don't know. So I did this awesome video with Sean Chandler digging deep into The Last Jedi. And at the end, we kind of got into a little bit of Solo, what we were expecting out of the film. And he said some things about how he was excited for it. And he was going to drop some of those trepidations that he had and just go to, and just expect to have fun.
Yeah.
And that got me.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I need to be like that. I need to do that. So I started to try to do that in my head. So what was my buy-in for Han Solo in this film was forgiving him for the fact that he will never be Harrison Ford. And if he tried to just imitate it, like you said, that would have sucked me out all the more.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he was just himself, because he's not a bad actor. And I'm glad he portrayed it the way that he did, because it's good that it wasn't just an impersonation. And once I forgave the fact it was never going to be the same and never have that same charisma, I just had fun with it.
I think that all of the reviews I've heard, people are misunderstanding this movie. Like, they don't get it. I know that's kind of an ignorant thing to say, but the biggest problem I have with reviews I've been reading is the criticism against the portrayal or the character of Han Solo. Not even the acting, but the actual character decisions. And the biggest complaint I've heard on that is that he's so optimistic and altruistic.
Well, he's young.
Exactly.
He's young. And only at the end of the movie does he get betrayed by everybody close to him, which forms the callousness that he has in the trilogy.
Thank you. So, in the original trilogy, his arc is going from, like, he doesn't care about anyone he doesn't care about anyone except himself. He's just a survivor.
Yeah.
He's grumpy, he's rough, and his character arc is that he learns to fight for something bigger than himself.
Yeah.
So we can't have a character arc that interrupts that arc.
Right.
So the only arc he has left is the arc to get him to that grumpy...
To being cynical. But see, it also makes sense, though, because you get to the trilogy, you know he's grumpy, but he has a heart of gold.
Exactly.
This shows you the gold. This shows you the innocence that was there, the hope that he did have.
He's young. His greatest motivation is love. Like, to me, they nailed it. And
I liked his arc in this. I mean, it showed it.
I saw 6 back-to-back YouTube reviews by some of the biggest movie reviewers that would review Star Wars, and they're all like, Han's grumpy and he's
well, not when he's 20 years old and he's fresh to the world.
That was his
character arc. It's when he's in his mid-30s and everybody's betrayed him that now he's all callous and given up on hope. It's not... Yeah, so when he's young, he's allowed to have that.
He's the cynic and the skeptic in the original trilogy.
And now we know why.
Now we know exactly.
We saw how full of hope he was, and it was dashed.
Otherwise, he would have zero character arc. And I've even heard people, it's like, it doesn't make sense, but people are saying that also he had no character arc. It's like, how?
I saw the character arc.
Which movie did they watch?
It's interesting because it was weird because it felt like the actual arc at the end. Like,
it did.
Yeah, so I can understand what they're saying there.
Which is fine.
But whatever. The point is, you see him be a hopeful character. You see everybody betray him, and you know why then he is the way he is.
And he makes selfish decisions.
Of course he does.
He does.
So it's like, it's all there, and it's just interesting to see it mixed up in this youthful, naive look at the galaxy, and now all of a sudden this movie ends. And
Thank you. I'm so glad you agree. Because I was yelling at my screen when I was watching these reviews. I was like, I guess they're missing...
Well, now you just yelled back. You are now on a screen, and you have just yelled back.
Yes. Feels good.
It does, doesn't it?
Thanks.
It's one great reason to start a channel, just to yell back.
Yeah.
The character that I loved, Lando.
Oh, I knew.
Donald Glover was.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he did a better job playing Lando than Han did Han. Like, I just thought he played that character.
I agree.
And I could see that as a young Lando. That was awesome.
I've heard nothing but positive responses. I think even Twitter said, like, the only thing worth seeing, which I disagree, the only worth seeing thing is Lando and Donald Glover in this portrayal. And he was spot on.
He was spot on. It was just awesome.
The thing I really enjoyed, too, is it was spot on to a way that really still added to the character.
Yeah.
It's not like they're like, okay, this is the only thing we know about Lando, so we could only do this.
Yeah.
They knew he was charming. They knew a little bit of what his story would include, and then they play. Like, the thing that I think was so unnecessary, that easily could have skipped it, but it added, was when he was recording his
book. And he's sitting there, chapter 5, and he's just sitting there recording his story.
So
yes.
perfect.
That was perfect.
And it was a small detail that they could have easily been like, I don't know if people will like it. But the fact that they included it, they took a risk of actually expanding who we know about this character.
Yeah.
I thought there was a good payoff there, and I think it believably tied in, and it made the interaction that we first see in I guess episode 5.
Yes.
It makes me enjoy it even more.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go back and see them interact.
Well,
again.
I was going through and I was finding clips for this video, which took me through Empire Strikes Back, and I'm looking at like, oh my gosh, I now know how Han won the ship. I know how he won the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And so I know what they're referring to in that conversation. And that was like, I don't know,
That's
like
fun,
things like that I thought were very, very clever of how they gave us those, you know, the fan service.
Okay,
it was very clever. And the other thing I liked, so talking about tie-ins, it always drove me, and I said this is my spoiler free, drove me nuts whenever Lando called him Han. Han. And the fact that they took this film and made a joke out of it where he's originally playing the card game and he calls him Han, and he goes, it's Han actually. Okay, Han.
In the rest of the movie, he maintained calling him Han.
Yeah, he maintained calling him Han.
I really
and they
enjoyed that.
Yeah, and it was just a joke, and it was an awesome nod to Empire Strikes Back, and it was so great.
So it was a good nod to fans, because I think a lot of people in the theaters didn't catch that he was calling him Han. But I immediately, in fact, I had to lean over to my dad and was like, oh, he's calling him Han.
He's calling him Han.
Genius.
It was a small moment, but it was so great.
So many people are like, oh, like, is it Han or is it Han? Because Lando called him Han. And the fact that he was just, like, doing it on purpose to get under his skin a little bit was
awesome.
It was good, yeah.
Now, tell me if you noticed this. So, when you go back to Empire Strikes Back, so you have C-3PO, and he's, like, doing diagnostics of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And he goes,
Sir, I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it has the most peculiar dialect.
But what was great was where C-3PO talked about the peculiar dialect, you have L3 the droid.
Wow, okay.
And that just blew my mind. Like, I caught that and I went, oh my gosh.
Wow,
because they melded L3 into the Millennium Falcon.
And, developed a character around that.
Yes!
That's pretty astonishing. I didn't think of that. In fact, that's such a missable dialogue point from the originals that I didn't remember that.
Yeah, I don't know why I did.
I remember,
but I just jumped right out.
Wow, I remember someone referencing that, and I think one of the reviews I saw, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so we're kind of getting into there's only 2 things I actually don't like about this movie.
Let's do it.
I have many nitpicks.
Let's do it.
Overall, I really enjoy this movie. I think I'm apparently one of the few.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I enjoy. I
don't get Star Wars fans. I don't know.
In my YouTube community, I feel like a lot of people in my YouTube community are enjoying it, but they can point out its flaws pretty easily because it's full of flaws.
Sure.
But so they're enjoying it.
There's some small things that you can nitpick, but there's 2 actual main problems that I have with the movie.
All right.
Probably one of the biggest. And in fact, to help kind of organize my thoughts, I had a list of things I liked and things I didn't like.
Nice.
And on the things I liked, I said fan service, because I thought there was a lot of moments that was really good.
Han and Chewie jumping into those seats for the first time, and our theater erupted.
Oh, yeah.
That was
the
awesome.
original Star Wars theme with... Oh, yeah, it was a great moment, yeah. In fact, I think I think me and my dad started that cheer. Anyway, so I wrote, okay, things I really like, fan service. There's really good moments that really paid off to fans.
Yeah.
And then on the things I didn't like, I wrote fan service. Because the thing that this movie did the worst at to me is it said, what is every single detail we know about Han all right, let's include all of it.
Yeah, they
like
yeah.
the only reason this was a problem is it leaves really nothing else that would pay tribute to what we knew of him. Right? So we're not really left with enough questions.
Yeah.
And I don't like that because we really saw Han Solo born in a week. Like, he literally got his name in this movie.
Which was weird. That was weird to me, how he got his name from an Imperial soldier. It's like, what?
I liked the idea. I think the little dialogue, the way it was written was a little strange. I think it could have just been written a little more fluid.
Well, I feel like it was strange because they wanted to give you a clever way of him getting his last name Solo.
Yeah.
And so it was more forced than it should have been.
It was a little bit like,
I think,
see
but
what we did?
Yeah. I think that was probably my biggest cringe moment in the film, though. And it was so short and fast, and I went, whatever.
Okay. It wasn't my biggest cringe moment.
Okay.
And we'll get to that.
All right, cool.
But the problem is that character was built in a week or a day or however long this movie's supposed to take. He gets his name, he gets the ship, he meets Chewie. Like, every detail is given to us, and the only thing that was really pre-existing is that I guess he was a pilot, which they kept referencing to.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
And then he just had his dice that so we don't know where it came from, but I think they tried to cram in too much. In fact,
a little bit, yeah.
It was to the point that I was so worried that at some point he was gonna in fact, here's what I thought, and I'm glad they didn't. I thought Han was gonna say "I love you," and then I thought she was gonna say "I know" or something like that. Like that
would have ruined it.
Exactly.
For me. That would have ruined it if they would have done that.
That's how many stuff they crammed in, and so there's a lot of moments that paid off perfectly. It was like, so rewarding as a fan, which is why I wrote it in the things I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But I think they had to include the Kessel Run. There's no getting around. They had to show the Kessel Run.
Yeah.
It's Han's biggest point of pride. Like, that's his claim to fame.
This is the ship that did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs.
That's how he's known.
Rounding
Across
down.
the galaxy, that was a good line. That was a good line. Rounding down, Chewie. Man. So they had to include stuff like that. A lot of stuff that they included, I enjoyed. It was fluid. It was natural. I think is just too much. He gets his pistol, like, everything that developed this character took place overnight, and I think it was a little bit too rushed.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's weird because you're right. I agree with you that it was too rushed. But I also don't want a Solo trilogy.
That's true.
So it's like this weird give and take. I wish what they would have done is just left a lot still a mystery and been okay with it.
Leave it up to us to fill in the
because
the
we
holes.
like that about him in A New Hope.
Sure.
Like, we never know when he's lying or exaggerating a story or telling the truth, and it's part of his charm that we don't know.
Right.
And so, like, if they would have just left a little bit more mystery, rather than, like you said, in a week's time, build Solo as we know him, then, probably, I agree.
Yeah. Just to get the complaints out of the way.
Let's do it.
My only other complaint, and I mentioned this last night, and it stood out immediately, and I don't know, maybe it had to do something with rewriting or reshooting or whatever, but the first probably 15 minutes of dialogue, nearly every single line in the first 15 minutes of the movie I hated.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think just the way that they were cramming exposition in the most unfluid way possible.
It's true. It was so stereotypical setup. Yeah.
Like, I'm actually faced. So this happens in movies a lot, but we get the very common thing where two characters are interacting in a way to they're setting up exposition, but it's in a conversation that's so fake and manufactured.
Yep.
So it's like, just to remind you, I'm really glad that you invite, like, it's like, you
By the way, my name is Han. I don't have a last name yet, and I'm getting this thing here that can make us warp faster so we can live outside the world, because we're street urchins, by the way, in case you forgot that we've been living here all of our lives.
That's it wasn't good, and then, I don't know what it was about the first part of the movie, and it had me worried.
Yeah.
But the original characters...
Well, when they jumped 3 years later, it got better.
Yes.
Yeah. After the 3 years later jump.
As they said 3 years, it was great.
Yeah, because they dropped all that exposition, and it was just, okay, now we're in it.
Yeah.
Now we're in it.
That guy chasing Han, the car chase,
Yeah.
The only thing...
I didn't even like that in the trailer. I was just like, oh, I get it. He's a young hot rod. I see the symbolism you're going for.
Yeah. I was a little worried they were going to go too Star Trek.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, I didn't even think about the Star Trek connection. That's hilarious.
So I was worried that was him, like, running away from Flight
being
Academy.
a Kirk. Yeah, being a Kirk or something.
From being a pilot. I thought he was running from authorities. The fact that he was running from, like...
a bad life. And
that made it better for me. But still, the action scene, I was, like... It was one of the few points where I was actually bored.
Yeah.
And so I was really worried. And then the moment they jump 3 years... And in fact, that was one of the coolest Star Wars universe building moments, is when we're like literally in the trenches.
Yeah, that was cool.
We see that
to actually see a war and the Empire in the trenches fighting in a war. That was interesting.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
And in fact, that was a lot of things that I think fan enjoyed from Rogue One.
Yes.
Is we get Star Wars, but from a super believable standpoint.
Yes.
It's not this like philosophical like knights and wizards. It's
Which I love,
like,
the philosophical knights and wizards, but it's also cool to go and get this standpoint.
Exactly. I love both. We have like we have I just totally blanked on names.
Still thinking about lizards. Emilia Clarke. I was watching that movie in frustration, like, this is Clark and Lana on Smallville all over again. I'm supposed to buy into this relationship, and I know it's not going to work. He ends up with Leia. The one thing that was interesting is I was watching that going, okay, so how will they end it? And when Tobias, Woody Harrelson, was talking, and he's like, trust no one, kid. I was like, oh, I get it. Emilia Clarke will betray him. Turns out both did.
You saw that coming.
Oh, this movie forecasted everything.
Okay.
Like, you knew everything that was coming.
I give you a lot of credit for that, because I have to say I didn't. And to be honest, I'm glad they went in that direction. I was thinking more that she was gonna die, right? So
I was back and forth. I knew she was either gonna betray him or she was gonna die, and I was just like, which direction are they gonna go?
She seemed genuine enough, and the thing that in first viewing, right? And this is the spoiler talk, so I hope you've seen it. But in first viewing, there's such oddities to what she's saying, and how she's interacting with Han, that it's like, okay, something's obviously going on here, and they're alluding to this like really dark past. Something's bad.
Yeah, for those 3 years he was training, she was.
And even the way that she bumps into Han, you're like, okay, this is weird.
It was weird.
But
first, it's like that's the beginning of the end right there. Yeah.
At first, I didn't know if it was a bad movie decision, but looking back, it facilitates this idea that she's like actually interacting with Han in a weird way, because she does. I truly believe she loves him,
but her life has changed, and she's more a survivor now than a lover, and that's like where she is.
And obviously, they're hinting that there's a lot of darkness that's been stirring up for her with that one of those final scenes. That I did not see that coming.
Well, that's why she decided to not be with him, because she realized there at the end, she goes, "I know who you are. You're the good guy."
Right. That was
and she knows who she is. She wasn't. In fact, the fact that she called Darth Maul at the end of the movie
calls him up,
which at the one hand, okay,
straight up FaceTimes Darth Maul.
Yeah, FaceTimes Darth. Well, first it made me wish I liked the prequels. Second, I haven't watched any of the animated show, but I do know in the animated show, like, he's robot from the waist down. Like, I know that existed.
You haven't seen the animated show?
I need to watch the Clone Wars. I have not watched that. I'm not good with the Star Wars extended stuff. I'm really good at, like, the Star Wars movie stuff, but all the other extended things I'm not that good at.
Watch the animated series. It's good.
But, so I'm looking at this Darth Maul thing, and I'm like, well, what are you actually going to do with this? Because we're moved on in the other Star Wars universe. Like, we're past, like, the death of Han Solo right now, even in Last Jedi. And Boba Fett is the next, which I could care less about Boba Fett. I do not understand the hype around that character even a little bit. Probably because I'm not versed in the extended universe. But when anybody gets hyped about Boba Fett, I just go, what? His part is so little.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
True.
I don't. I'm sorry. And if I've stirred up controversy on YouTube, well, everything stirs up controversy on YouTube, so I don't care. Yeah. I just don't care about Boba Fett, and I'm like, a Boba Fett movie. Anyway, so I'm looking at Darth Maul, and I'm like, that is a great reveal for a franchise, but are we really going to take that further?
I have to say, I have to get it out there. The animated series is the best thing
I need to
come from the prequels.
I need to check it out.
I grew up with the prequels, so I have a bit of nostalgia with it. I recognize all of the ways that they were a mess. But the best thing by far is the animated series, because it's the best prequel era lore and canon that we get. So I suggest it. The one thing that I thought was a bizarre decision, even when I saw it in the animated series, was to bring back Darth Maul. And I was like,
because he's cut clean in half.
Such a weird decision. And then, in episode 1, Phantom Menace, we see him say like 2 words. So there's a lot of ability to kind of interpret that character in other ways.
Yeah.
He was on screen for like 8 seconds, but he's menacing. You can feel it. I'm pretty sure from that moment he has nothing to do with Palpatine or the Empire or the Sith anymore. He's his own thing.
He's Crimson Dawn.
Right.
Yeah, he's his own.
He's separate.
Yeah.
And I want them to explore that. But here's the thing. I don't want them to explore that in another Han Solo movie.
Yes. So maybe Boba Fett could bring something to that.
That's what I'm thinking. There has to be a payoff. If there's no payoff to this, if it was just like a wink to the fans, I would be annoyed. It'd be like you resurrected him to go nowhere.
That's yes.
We got to talk about Chewbacca. That scene where we got introduced to Chewbacca in this movie, the mud pit fight, was cool, except that Han's back should have been broken 3 times over when he was thrown into those metal legs. So beyond that one part that I just had to suspend my disbelief. Aside from that was a really cool way to meet Chewie and set up the idea of that life debt where Chewie and Han really met in this desperate situation and Han saved him.
Yeah. So, I have so much to say. The first thing I'll say is on cue. In my head, I'm like, I wonder when Chewie's gonna be in this movie. Like, on cue, 50 seconds later, we get the introduction of Chewie.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, there he is. I to be honest, I don't know where I stand on this. Part of it was epic. Part of it was a bit strange. I love the idea that there's a little bit of expectation subversion where you're expecting like this big like Rancor type monster, and
that's what I was looking for. I didn't even at this point I had forgotten about Chewie, and I was expecting.
I was not expecting Chewie. As soon as you see your silhouette, I think most people would have been, oh, it's Chewbacca, and that was probably the worst part. Is they're going for this cool moment, but there's a few parts in the movie, and this happens with anything that's when we know the outcome. This is always inevitable, but we know what's gonna happen. So like, we know Han and Chewie are best friends, so it's a little bit of like, there's not genuine tension, there's just genuine curiosity.
You're like, how are you gonna work it out?
How is this gonna play out?
Because we know it plays out.
And it was, to be honest, I thought hilarious. I hope it was meant to be funny. If it was funny on accident, that's probably a bad thing. But when he starts speaking like Wookiee,
yes!
Oh my god, that was hilarious. And the fact that like Chewie at first didn't care. He's like throwing Han all over. Even when they escape, he's like dragging him by the chain. And Han's just trying to get through to him. I think the interaction was nice. The problem I think I had, and again, a second viewing would probably help with this, is they went too quickly. Like, they seemed best friends too quickly.
It's true, they did. Like, yeah.
So you mentioned the life debt. I don't think the life debt was getting him out of prison. Was him maybe saving him on the train?
Oh, yeah. I feel like those were the moments that really bonded them together and created that loyalty. So that was like, it was cool like to have those moments. But like you said, it was more of a curiosity of how will you develop those moments, because it's like, there was zero tension.
Right, there was.
Like, you can't watch this movie and have tension at all, because, okay, he's not going to end up with Emilia Clarke. So the only question is, how do they not end up together?
Exactly.
And, okay, so Chewie's going to rip off his arms? No, Chewie's not going to rip off his arms. They become best friends. So it's like, so throughout this whole movie, you're watching it, and there's no tension anywhere. Yeah. The only question is, okay, how will you play it out?
And I think, hopefully Ron Howard knew that. I think that this movie wasn't created to have tension. I think they knew that can't be what this movie is about. Yep. And so instead, this movie is just a fun, along for the ride.
Yeah. And that's what I felt like when I was watching it, and I was along for that ride. Problems and all, I was along for the ride.
That was the strength of this movie. Yeah, there's no tension at all. But every movie doesn't necessarily have to have that specific tension. The situations that they got in were a lot of fun, and there was kind of again, not tension of like, will they make it through? Like, will they die? Yes. Obviously not. In fact,
oh no, will Chewie die on the train?
The running joke for that trailer is they leave it a cliffhanger of Chewie hanging on a train. You see the cliff, and it's like, is he gonna, like, that's the running joke.
Die? Will he die?
We know he doesn't die.
Oh my gosh, I did that trailer reaction. It was the first thing I said. In the back of my mind, I went, well, there's the low-hanging fruit I definitely picked there. Gosh.
It was weird that they, like, included that in the trailer. It's like,
this is a moment of great tension. Yeah. Will Chewbacca die? Come see the movie and find out.
Yeah. So I think there's tension in how are they going to get through this? The odds were stacked against them continuously.
We know they'll get through it. We know they become friends. How will it play out?
Who do they lose in the process? And so there was enough enough additional characters.
Yes, characters that are not part of the original. Yeah.
Enough of like, okay, what is going to happen? Because really the only standing characters was Lando, Han, and Chewie. Everyone else is up for takes. They're up for grabs.
Yeah.
That is killed off. So
yeah, so there's a little tension there. I mean, I had a feeling about Tobias. Something was going to happen because he wasn't in the original. So it was kind of cool to see that he was a traitor and Emilia Clarke was a traitor.
I thought that was a bold decision.
It was to have them
betrayed by both of his closest characters.
Yeah, so that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Nothing. I even as I'm saying it, it's like no, none of that hit me emotionally. None of that hit me strong. But it's like I get it.
I think so. When we're talking about tension, there's this. And you're probably familiar, there's this movie idea that you don't just have a bomb under the table that explodes. You kind of bring the audience along so that we're like, oh no, there's a bomb. And I think there wasn't quite enough setup with Tobias.
Right.
It was a little bit too, like, unexpected. And again, like, the more clever moviegoers are going to start to realize something strange in his lines about not trusting anyone and stuff. But there wasn't enough setup where you're like, aha, I knew it.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit, it's so confusing that I was actually watching, I was like, okay, is this part of their plan? Like,
at the very end there, we had Paul Bettany, he had Emilia Clarke, and he's like, I have an informant. It's like, okay, one of two things is going to happen right now. That informant is going to be Emilia Clarke, or it's going to be Tobias. And then Tobias walked through the door and went, yep, it's Tobias. But then as we got more and more towards the end, it's like, one of two things is going to happen. Emilia Clarke will die, or she's been wanting to take over this organization the whole time.
For sure that Paul Bettany's character was going to kill Emilia Clarke. Which, just to mention, I liked Paul Bettany's character.
No, he was good.
I think he did a great job with Dryden. It was interesting. There was enough moments that were menacing. There was a few kind of quirky oddities about him. It was a little bit strange. Like when he was like all giddy about the plan that they had developed. It was a little bit weird. Obviously, they're going for that like psycho deranged killer kind of thing.
I liked him. I liked him, but I couldn't help but see Vision. Oh, it's an evil version of Vision. So that's like what I was thinking as I was watching.
Especially because they took Paul Bettany out of makeup for Infinity Wars.
Yep. Tobias betraying him, it made sense because we got to get rid of Woody Harrelson's character. Emilia Clarke, like, oh, I'm friends with Darth Maul all of a sudden. Yeah, we had to get rid of her. Yeah. And Paul Bettany, he had to die because the only person chasing Han is Jabba the Hutt. So, like, it's like, it all makes sense. It's like, okay, this is all going to come to a head, and that's incredibly predictable.
And one of the biggest criticisms I've heard is that there's no villain in this movie. There's no bad guy. And I can kind of see where they're going.
He traveled with his villains. I mean, you had Paul Bettany, who was a villain. You had Tobias, who was going to betray him the whole time and was a villain. And then you had Emilia Clarke, who was going to betray. So, he was with his villains.
I think there's enough opposition to work, and the movie's not about his villains.
It's not even about that. Like you said earlier, it's the ride. The movie knows what it is. Yeah. It's not an epic Star Wars saga film. Yeah. It's the ride. So in the end, what would you rate this movie from an A+ to an F? What would you give this movie?
I need to see it again, but as of now, I would give it a B. I would give it 8 out of 10.
Oh, nice.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. As a standalone film, I think it holds its own. As a Star Wars film, it builds the universe, it builds characters we love. So I'm going to say tentatively 8 out of 10.
That's a good grade. I gave it a B+.
Okay.
And my reasoning for giving it a B+ is very shallow. I saw Deadpool 2 and I gave that a B, and I thought this was infinitely better than Deadpool 2, so I gave it a B+. I guess that's not infinitely better, but I thought it was definitely better than Deadpool 2.
Okay.
So, like, I had more fun watching this than I did the Deadpool sequel, so it got a higher grade.
I'm so sad with Star Wars characters, not characters, Star Wars fans lately. I don't understand the hate of The Last Jedi. I think Star Wars fans...
Well, I go back and forth. I don't hate The Last Jedi, but I understand where people are underwhelmed. But at the same time, so let me back that up and say I fall on the positive end of Last Jedi, and I really liked it a lot. So here's what I will say. Force Awakens come out, and we cried, oh my gosh, you're just treading water. Yes. You're just doing the same thing. You're just... And then Last Jedi comes out, and then everybody cries, oh, that was awful. So it's like, well, then what are the filmmakers to do? If the fans can't settle on it, and they yell at one for being too much like the original, and yell at the other for being too different, what can you do?
I want Star Wars fans to give more permission to Disney, to Star Wars. Star Wars is so culture. It's not even pop culture. It's like bona fide culture.
Yeah.
And if anything kind of goes against something that maybe didn't even exist on the silver screen, just in their head, they've cried that they've been wrong. And I liked this movie. It did have some problems. I know that I apparently have some of the better thoughts on this movie.
Hey, that's cool.
I enjoy being the more optimistic movie reviewer.
I try to be. Just sometimes when you watch movies as a reviewer, it's easy to get more and more cynical. So I try to always hold that optimistic look of movies, because that's why you go, because they're fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So what did you think of Solo? What did you agree with or disagree with in our conversation? So join that conversation in the comments and tell us what you thought of Solo. Did Han have a character arc in this film? Do you like the fact that he started more hopeful and became more cynical? What did you think of all of that? Let us know in the comments, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified the next time I drop an awesome spoiler talk like this, or a movie review, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. This is Wyatt.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, Wyatt, for coming on, man. We'll have to have you on more, talk more movies.
I would love that.
It'll be awesome.
Yeah, for Boba Fett.
For Boba Fett. Oh, boy. There's the Senate coming out. And I'm Durbin.
Yes.
Thanks for checking out Durbania.